Welcome back to Sports Pantheon. I came across an interesting article related to this year's NBA Finals and I wanted to share it on the channel. Alright, so the article was published on June 4th, just a couple days ago, and it's called NBA Finals 2025, How Paul George Blockbusters Built Thunder and Pacers. And I think it's pretty self-explanatory. This article is kind of explaining how the trades that Paul George was involved in earlier in his career, are responsible for shaping this year's NBA Finals teams, being the Pacers and obviously the Thunder. So I thought it'd be interesting to review Paul George's career a little bit, especially his time with the Pacers and Thunder, and talk about what Paul George's future looks like moving forward. So here we have Pacers P. He was drafted in 2010, the 10th overall pick. Between 2010 and 2017, he spent 7 seasons there, had 4 playoff appearances, including 2 Eastern Conference Finals appearances, it's pretty impressive considering the Eastern Conference at the time, especially because in 2013, he went 7 games. Him and the Pacers went 7 games against the Miami Heat. You'll remember that's the Heatles, LeBron James, Bosh, and D-Wade. That's the team that ended up beating the Spurs in large part because of that Ray Allen shot in Game 6, I think it was. And then the next year, they went 6 games again in the Eastern Conference Finals with that same team that ended up losing to the Spurs. Now, I know Paul George has claimed that maybe they would have won a ring one of those years. I don't think so, though. That's a different topic, but I think those Spurs teams were special, especially that 2014 one that won, and I don't think this Indiana team was getting past them as good as they were. So during his time with the Indiana Pacers, Paul George actually won the 2012-2013 Most Improved Player Award. Also during his time with the Pacers, he made 3 third-team All-NBA teams, 2 All-Defensive First Teams, and 2 All-Defensive Second Teams, along with 2 All-Stars. Now, looking back, Paul George is definitely responsible in some part in developing the popularity of the bigger wing that's both effective on offense and defense. During that era, it was LeBron James, Kevin Durant, Kawhi Leonard was up and coming, and then of course Paul George. And those 4 guys were pillars in the NBA at the time, definitely influencing today's game. So here's some of his statistics. During his entire time in Indiana, he averaged 18 points per game, 6.3 rebounds per game, 3.2 assists per game, and 1.7 steals per game on 43.2% shooting and 37% from 3. And then this one over here on the right, 2016-17, this is his best season with the Pacers. I think it was his last one. And that's when he averaged almost 24 points, 6.6 rebounds, 3 assists, 1.6 steals, 46% from the field, and almost 40% from 3. That definitely represented a leap for Paul George. I think most considered him an elite player, one of the top players in the league at the time for sure. But then of course he was traded to the Thunder, and the trade is basically Domantas Sabonis and Victor Oladipo for Paul George. I think there might have been a couple picks involved, maybe a couple other role players, but these are the bigger names of the trade. And at the time, it seemed like a win for the Thunder. I think the Pacers were kind of going into rebuild mode. You had a young Sabonis and Victor Oladipo, who I think was a fringe all-star at the time. Of course, the Pacers used Domantas Sabonis to trade him to the Kings and in return get Tyrese Haliburton. I remember when this trade happened, I think it was 2022. Haliburton was playing really well at that time with the Kings. Obviously, the Kings, they weren't a superpower or anything, and they were tasked with a tough situation where they have to pick between 2 guards, being De'Aaron Fox and Tyrese Haliburton, and clearly they chose Fox and let Haliburton go, getting Sabonis. I mean, looking back in hindsight, obviously, I don't think they would have done that trade if they knew who Haliburton would become, and also if they knew that Fox would demand a trade. Sabonis is still there, but it's pretty unclear what the future for today's Kings is. I mean, you got DeRozan and Levine and Sabonis still, with Malik Monk, I think, shifting to back to that one position. It just doesn't seem like this is a team that's really competing. Maybe they'll make a playoff or 2, but I also, you've seen the rumors about DeMar DeRozan might be gone or Zach LaVine. So looking back, the Kings really lost this trade, but it's interesting to look back and see the clear connection from Paul George to Tyrese Haliburton. But the immediate results for the Thunder, it wasn't bad. They traded for Paul George to pair with Russell Westbrook. And this was, just after Kevin Durant had left, and Paul George did his best to fill the void that Kevin Durant left in going to that championship Warriors team. And in 2018 and 2019, during that season, Paul George finished actually third in the MVP voting with 28 points per game, 8.2 rebounds per game, 4.1 assists per game, and then 2.2 steals per game. If I remember right, that 2.2 steals, I think that was league leading as well. And then 28 points is quite the jump from the lower 20s from the Pacers. But this is where Paul George, he's selling shoes, one of the top Nike athletes, and he really gained a lot of notoriety during this time. And then you'll remember Kawhi Leonard wins the championship that year with the Raptors and then heads his way to LA with the Clippers. And that's where Paul George and the Kawhi Leonard connection goes, and the infamous trade of Paul George from the Thunder to the Clippers with an absolute haul of a trade for the Thunder. In hindsight, this seems like a hugely lopsided deal. I think a lot of people saw the potential of Shai, but not this level, not MVP level, I don't think. I definitely didn't. I thought he was a good player, but, I thought he fit more of the mold of a secondary scorer, potentially even like a six man of the year kind of guy, almost like a better version of a Lou Williams or that kind of, spark off the bench scorer, somewhere to probably where Jalen Williams is today. But the thing is that this was a big trade at the time, and the Thunder, they got a huge haul, obviously. And I think at the time it was considered a lopsided deal, but if it worked out with the Clippers and Paul George and Kawhi Leonard could have won, obviously this would be looked at differently. You have the COVID season, some of the shortened seasons, and then injuries between Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, and then you have them blowing a 3-1 lead in the playoffs. I mean, what a nightmare for the Clippers looking back. Like the Pacers, I mentioned earlier the Pacers probably wouldn't trade Haliburton if they could go back in time, but definitely the Clippers are not going for this trade. In fact, who knows if they're even going for Kawhi Leonard if they knew who Shai would become. Now, to break down this trade, this is the bulk of it, I believe. It's Shai and Danilo Gallinari, and then these 5 first-round picks. One of them's a swap, and one of the picks ends up being Trey Mann, who I think they trade, I can't remember who they get, but it's to bolster up that roster. And then that 22 first-round pick ends up being Jalen Williams. It's insane. So when you look at the graphics, the advertisements for the NBA Finals this year, it's like, man, you got how many players on this list have some connection to those Paul George trades? The Haliburton one and the Shai one, Jalen Williams, seem obvious, but the capital that both teams were able to get, both the Pacers and Thunder were able to obtain, it definitely led to this future for both of these teams. And, it's not too much of a stretch for that article to say, the Paul George blockbuster deals is what put these teams in positions to potentially win a championship. What do you think, though? Do you remember what you were thinking during the time of those Paul George trades? I know I thought the Clippers were going to do something. I really liked Kawhi Leonard's game, even going back to the Spurs, for him to win a championship and then go down to LA, pair up with Paul George. It just seemed like, I don't know, it seemed like they were destined for a championship. But obviously this graphic represents more than that. The Paul George trades are, pairing superstar duos, first being Paul George and Russell Westbrook, and then Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. It's an era of the past now. Now you have these teams who are filled with, elite guards, but really a few all-star caliber players in Jalen Williams, Chet Holmgren, Pascal Siakam, those kind of guys with really, really good role players and deep benches. It's pretty amazing how much the NBA has shifted. And I think those Paul George blockbuster trades, they definitely were of their time. The Clippers were going for something, similar to the Brooklyn Nets with that Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, James Harden team. And then obviously more recently it was James Harden, Paul George, and Kawhi Leonard on that team, and even Russell Westbrook joins the team a little bit later. But it just seems like, that those super team eras, even the big duo eras, it's over with, and now we have a league where there's true parity, anyone can win. And it's just interesting how those Paul George trades symbolize the shift in focus for franchises. Now, this is one more thing I wanted to bring up. I thought this was kind of interesting. This is Paul George's NBA 2K25 rating. To start the season, he was at 89 overall for the 76ers, and to end it, he finished over here with an 83, which honestly, I don't know, is that generous or fair? I don't know, it's tough to say. I think this is the thing to end off with here. This season, the 2024-25 NBA season, 34-year-old Paul George finished the season with just 41 games played, averaging 16.2 points per game on 43% shooting. Now, he's not beating washed allegations with these stats, obviously. But the question I wanted to to ask you guys is, do you think Paul George has something left in the tank, and is it in Philadelphia? You know, there's been rumors that they're going to try to offload him and move for something different. I don't know if that's with or without Joel Embiid as well. You have guys like Tyrese Maxey and Jared McCain, who are young talents that seem like they're worth building around, but the Paul George situation, the Joel Embiid situation, it might just be too much to overcome. So let me know in the comments, if you're the GM for the 76ers, what's your goal here? Are you going to ride it out with Paul George one more time and Joel Embiid, see if they can get a healthy season and put something together? I think the East could be interesting next year, especially if Giannis is gone, or even if he just moves to a different team in the East. It seems like, you know, with the Pacers making the finals, if you're a team like the 76ers, you might feel like you're not that far off if you could just have a few things fall your way, like Paul George maybe having a little bit better of a season and having Joel Embiid available. But let me know in the comments, and thanks for watching Sports Pantheon.